Hey, welcome to Outdoors and Country Living. It's Leanne. In this video, I will be pressure cooking and pressure canning turkey and the turkey broth. I hope you stick around. So in the kitchen sink, I have the pressure canner on the right. We have our turkey bird on the left. This is just a frozen turkey that I have thawed. I like to wash the turkey. We're going to take out this plastic retainer that's holding the legs. And the turkey neck is in one end of the turkey, usually the bottom end. Just going to pop out that retainer. We will dispose of that. And I just like to rinse it and kind of inspect the turkey, remove any pin feathers that may still be in there. And I'm just running it under some cold water. Yes, I washed my kitchen sink before I started with good old soap and water. So in the other end of the bird, you will find a sack of gizzards and other organ meats. We don't like to use those here, but you surely could. So I'm just inspecting the turkey here. Make sure everything looks good. Picking out any pin feathers. Get it nice and clean so we can cook it. I'm putting the turkey into my pressure cooker. This is also the same pressure cooker or canner that I use to can our food with. We're going to add water. This is cold water. I'm using tap water because we have a private well. If you don't have a private well, use some filtered water. But I like to bring the water 3/4 of the way up on the turkey. We're going to be cooking this 5 minutes per pound. We like to season our turkey, so season it to your preference. In goes some garlic powder. This is an 18-pound bird, so it's going to be pressure cooked for 90 minutes. Some ground black pepper. I don't have any specific amounts, just put in the amount that you desire or prefer. If I had to guess, I would say maybe a 1/4 cup of each. This is some parsley, dried parsley, dried sweet basil. These are our favorite seasonings. They make a wonderful flavored broth. And salt. We use pink Himalayan salt here. Just make sure you're using a non-iodized salt. I'm going to put the canner lid on. Secure the lid. Turn the heat on high and wait for it to heat up. So while we're waiting on that to heat up, let's clean our sink. Since we're working with poultry, just clean your sink after you're finished and surrounding areas with good old hot soapy water. So the canner is hot. I'm letting it vent for 10 minutes. Whether you're pressure cooking or pressure canning, this is proper technique. You can see the steam coming out of the pipe there. I'm going to add my weight. This is going to be cooked at 10 pounds of pressure for 90 minutes. So again, 5 minutes per pound of turkey. I'm at pressure. I'm starting my timer now. If you're at a higher elevation, greater than 1,000 feet, make sure you adjust for your altitude. Those adjustments will be in the video description, so check those out if you're not familiar. 90 minutes is up now. The pressure has naturally fallen to 0. I'm removing the weight on the pressure cooker. I'm going to take it over to the kitchen sink. It's easier for me to reach, that's why I set it in the sink. Just going to open up the canner here. And here we have our turkey and our beautiful broth. The turkey is not beautiful, but that's okay. I don't need it to be beautiful. But look at that rich bone broth. Ooh, this is good. You got all the seasoning in there. And yep, I drank a cupful. All right, so here I have a stainless steel pot with a mesh strainer. I'm ladling some of the broth over into this pot so we can start removing the meat from the carcass. The strainer is there to catch any meat pieces or bone. So I'm just using a ladle out of the canner, putting it through the strainer. Pardon my finger in the way. Didn't realize that happened. All right, now that I have a lot of the broth out of the way, I can access the meat, and I'm peeling off the turkey skin. We do not want to can that. You'll have to sort through and debone your turkey very carefully. It's best if you let your canner cool quite a bit so you can manage it with your fingers. So just debone your turkey meat. We're just wanting the meat, not any skin. All right, got the turkey deboned. There's our bowl of meat. Still have a little bit of broth in the canner, which we will strain. And there's the bulk of our broth right there on the left. So here's the remaining broth that was still in the canner. Just going to strain that. And that's going to catch any meat pieces or bone that's still left in the bottom of the pot. You don't want that in your broth. And all the scraps are here in this garbage bucket, which will go out, and the dogs will think they went to heaven. All right, so we have our turkey meat and our broth. Now we can start jarring it up. So here I have just clean mason jars and our lids and our rings. We're going to start filling the jars. I'm using pint jars today. So here's our funnel. We'll fill jars, leaving 1 inch of headspace. So to your clean jars, add your turkey meat. I like to break it a little bit if the pieces are still large, so it fits nicely into the jar, and I can get quite a bit of meat in each jar. Just gently pack it in there. Don't cram it, but you can firmly pack it, but just don't press it in there. We need to have room for the broth. There was a little gap there. I'm just using my finger to fill it in. Yes, my hands are clean. All right, so we are at 1 inch of headspace for the meat. You can see it's in there pretty firm, but not packed in there. So now we're going to ladle some of the broth over the meat to cover it. I'm just stirring the broth. That black pepper likes to settle in the bottom. So carefully ladle the broth over the meat, giving it time to settle and go down into the meat. Still leaving 1 inch of headspace after you add the broth. Once I get them all filled, we will debubble them. So the jars are filled. I'm using the handle of a large wooden spoon. This is my debubbling technique for meat. Just press it down in each jar. And then we'll come back and add any broth. That one's going to need some more broth. The others don't look too bad. All right, so to that one, I'm just going to add enough broth to cover the meat and bring it up to that 1 inch of headspace. So jars are filled. We have to wipe the rims. I'm using a damp washcloth. Some people like to use vinegar, but I don't. I never have. Put your lid and your band on. Screw the band just fingertip tight. Don't over crank it or your lids will buckle in the canner. Wipe the rim. Put on your lid and your band. Now we're ready for the canner. I'm adding hot water and 1/4 cup vinegar. Since we have well water, the vinegar helps with calcium deposits and clouding of your jars. Second layer, since I'm doing pints, my canner will hold 2 layers. Add enough water according to your canner directions. I just don't cover your jars on the bottom layer. I like to bring it up about halfway. Secure your lid. Turn your heat on. Again, I'm venting the canner for 10 minutes before we add the weight. Once we've vented the canner for 10 minutes, then I'm adding the weight, again at 10 pounds of pressure. If you're over 1,000 feet elevation, you'll need to adjust this. Look in the description box below. Pints are processed for 75 minutes. Quarts are processed for 90 minutes. That's for meat and broth. I'm at pressure. My weight is jiggling. I'm starting my timer. Since I'm doing pints, it's 75 minutes. The canner is done. 75 minutes is up. I'm turning my heat off. I'm going to let it sit here and rest and let the pressure fall to 0. And I have quarts of broth waiting to go into the canner once the pressure has fallen and I get the jars out. Broth is treated and processed just like meat and must be pressure canned. All right, the pressure is now at 0. I can remove the weight. It's still hot, so make sure you protect your hand. I'm going to open the canner. And we're going to open it and just cock the lid like I'm showing you here. Just cock the lid and let the steam and heat come out slowly. I let it rest like this for 15 to 20 minutes. This will prevent siphoning. Very important step. You don't want to shock your jars. After that 15 to 20 minute rest period, the jars are ready to come out of the canner. I have a cutting board underneath this towel to protect the countertop. Just carefully remove your jars with a jar lifter. Look how beautiful the canned turkey and the broth are. These will be shelf stable for several years. We're still working on canned turkey and chicken and broth from 2021. But this is how we can poultry and broth. I've been home canning for 28 years and have been very successful. I would encourage you to obtain a canning book, whether it's new or used, and read it and understand the basic principles of canning. It's very important to have that base foundation of knowledge. While your jars are resting in the canner before you get them out, they may seal, you may hear them pop, and that's perfectly fine. No worries. So, we just made canned turkey and broth for the pantry. This is so moist and delicious to add to various recipes or just open a can and eat it. We'll let them sit here for 12 to 24 hours to completely cool. After they've completely cooled, remove the bands. This is very important. You do not store your home canned food with the bands on. You can see how loose they are. I can do most of them one-handed. And that's normal after the lids have sealed for the bands to be loose. But please remove them. Our jars are a little oily and greasy, so we're going to wash them once they're fully cooled. But here's the broth that I canned. All right, let's give these jars a cleanup just with some mild soap, hot water, and a rag. Clean your jars. When you can meat or broth, it's normal to have some oily residue on the jars. I do this with all of our canned goods and then set them out to dry. And then you can label them and get them ready for storage. Thanks for sticking around and seeing how I can turkey and the broth. It's really not that difficult. Just take some time. May God bless you. Take care.